You're listening to Codepunk with Bill Ahern and Michael Zuhl, a podcast about the intersection between programming, technology, and the digital lifestyle.
Hey, Mike. Good to hear from you again.
Hey, man. How have you been doing? I know we're in the first week of February. This episode probably won't go out until the end of February. So we're gearing up for Valentine's Day. Are you ready to spend some money on a consumerist holiday and buy your wife a bunch of stuff that will either die or she'll eat?
Yes, I am. In fact, having been accused in the past of not being very romantic, which is true, what I decided to do this year for Valentine's Day is I'm going to send my wife a letter from a secret admirer telling her to wear, and she knows it's going to be from me because I always said, don't make plans on a specific date. But it's all just part of, so it's like a little bit of role playing. So I'm going to send her a letter from a secret admirer, and then I'm trying not to say too loud, but the office door is closed. And then to meet me at a Hilton hotel, I will have already sort of like got a room for the night, and then going to go and go to a bar, tell her to go to the bar and pretend like we don't know each other and play like strangers, and I get to flirt with her. And, I think that she kind of made a mention to something like that before a long time ago. So I thought that might be fun. So that's
women
the
appreciate
Valentine's
stuff
Day
like
plan.
that. I mean, Heather, it's very hard with kids, obviously, but Heather was like at a point last week where she was like, damn it, I'm making Haley come over and she's watching these kids and you're taking me out to eat because I need some time away. So I definitely acquiesced in them because I'm like, because Haley is my friend's daughter. Now she's 20 and she's extremely responsible beyond her years. But hassling somebody and dropping two kids on them, especially two-year-olds who are definitely into their terrible twos.
Oh, wow.
Having her handle, I'm like, well, are you sure? Because, I still want Haley to like us afterwards. Because she does come and sit with Heather, when Heather needs to get something done, or if Heather runs to the store and she doesn't want to take the kids in, Haley will go with her to stay in the car and watch the kids. But we went. I mean, it was fun, and it was hilarious because we go out to eat. We go to a sushi place because Heather likes sushi, and we order like 4 different sushi rolls, miso soup. And when you're a parent, one of the things that you learn early on is you're on kind of like parent eating time, which when you go out means you're going to eat as fast as humanly possible so that your kid doesn't throw a fit, because you want to make sure you eat. And when you take kids out earlier on and they're in there, they'll eat for a little bit, and then suddenly this isn't interesting anymore, or I'm not hungry, or I just wet myself. So they'll just cause a scene right there in the restaurant. And so you learn to keep all of the food on one side of the table. It looks absolutely ridiculous if anybody ever comes by. If you have twins, you got 2 on one side of the table, kind of because you're at a square table. So one's to my left and one's to Heather's, right, so that they're kind of next to each other. And that's just so that we keep all the food on our side, because otherwise they're grabbing at it and everything.
Right.
My kids are good. Don't get me wrong, but this is stuff that like every kind of kid goes through. And but so we go out by ourselves, and you sit down. And you're like, well, we're definitely going to pace ourselves, and we're not going to eat as fast as we do when we go out with the kids. But you're so used to eating that fast. It's like 10 minutes later, you're done with all your sushi. You stuffed yourself, and so Heather didn't know what to do. She's like, well, what do I do now? I was like, I don't know. I says we can. You want to go to Barnes & Noble and get a coffee and hang out there? I mean, it was a Sunday because Saturday we didn't want to ruin Haley's night. So it's like, okay, well, we did it on Sunday. Mall closes at 6, so mall's already closed. And she's like, well, we can go to Applebee's and have a drink there. Like, so that's married couple life right there, Applebee's for drinks. And so we pull in there, and she's like, well, or we can go to the Tilted Kilt. So the Tilted Kilt is in the mall. And what that is it's like Hooters, only it's women in short skirts instead of women in tight shirts. And we'd never been there before, and we wanted to go see what it was like. And, because of course the advertisements always have like these luscious women on them. And, it's like, it's not going to be like that. But we would just be interested because in fact, Haley and her boyfriend had gone there one time, and it was like the service was terrible. They spilled drinks everywhere. So it was almost like maybe we should go watch what this train wreck is all about. So Heather's like, we can go to Applebee's, we can go to Tilted Kilt. I don't know. And she was like, let's go to Tilted Kilt. I was like, okay. So I drive across the road because it's right across the way, and we pull up, and I get out of the car, and she doesn't get out of the car. I'm like, okay, is she waiting for me to open her door for her? So I go around and I go to open her door, and she's just got this look on her face, and she winds the window down. She says, I left my wallet at home. So we didn't have her wallet because my wife, she's almost 30, but she still looks like she's 15. So she's going to get carded most definitely. So we ended up, going to Barnes and Noble, and she got a coffee, and then we were back home within 3 hours. So I understand that keeping things romantic and getting out and doing things, and that's good for you. I mean, my wife, she'll settle for a box of salted caramel chocolates from the local chocolate factory, and we can't get flowers for her because the cat eats them. Although maybe I'll get something so he'll eat them and die, because I hate that cat. I'm just kidding. I don't actually wish ill will on the cat, but
right. No, but I get it. I mean, we have, my wife has 3 cats and they just wreck shop. So
right.
No, but hey, I think that it's nice to try and find new ways to make the relationship exciting and interesting. I don't always make the effort I should, and when I had this idea, which is I'm certainly under no delusion that this was like, I came up with this idea, right? You see it, I just kind of like, that'd be perfect this year. So that's going to be that'll be the February thing.
Yeah. Sounds good, man. And that was probably the happy-go-lucky section, or the rather joyous section of this podcast, because we're going to talk about encryption, and there's very specific reasons why. I want to start the podcast by saying that regardless of your political affiliation, we're probably going to talk about the Trump administration, at least just a little bit. If we're derogatory, it's not because we're leaning one way or the other. Let's just say that obviously something like the Patriot Act, which allows for the indefinite detention of Americans on American soil if they're just associated with terrorism, that was something that was extended under the Barack Obama administration. So Democrats did the same thing that we hollered at Republicans for. And, Republicans are doing the same things that we hollered at Democrats for. And, whether it's drone warfare during the Obama administration, or it's some of the immigration stuff you're seeing today with Trump, the thread in this episode is simply that government, regardless of who's in the golden chair, but government and government policies and people in politics and this kind of modern aristocracy of eternal congressional leaders definitely, or I don't want to say they're a threat, but they definitely seem like they have the privilege and the need, and they deserve to kind of hear what's going on in communications among regular people. So when we talk about things like freedom of the press, and of whistleblowing, and of people spying, or companies or corporations, governments spying on their citizens, spying on their users, we're talking about something that's occurred throughout all administrations. And if it seems like we mentioned Trump a little too much in this episode, or mentioned Trump's administration a little too much in this episode, which we probably won't mention it too much, but if we do, it's in the context of that's the administration that we're currently in, that's who's currently president, that's who's currently running the show, but it's not something that we solely are attaching to the Trump administration. It was there in the Obama administration, it was there in the Bush administration. I mean, Edward Snowden's whistleblowing and everything that they were doing in the PRISM, and all of the other documents that he leaked. I mean, that was stuff that Democrat or Republican the government was doing. So we want to specifically talk about, after the election, and Trump obviously won, and Trump has been battling with the press, not just throughout the inauguration process, but also now that he's president. I mean, we've seen him call different news agencies fake news, and he's made various threats. And Steve Bannon has said to the that the media should just shut the hell up. There's been comments made towards the press that it was enough that there are people online who have tweeted or have mentioned, hey, if you're going to do any sort of activism, or if you're going to do any sort of things with journalistic integrity, download Signal, download Tor, put a passcode on your phone. And it may sound paranoid, it may sound Big Brotherish, but it brings up the important point that we're going to talk about in this episode, and that's secure communications and encryption. And I want to get your thoughts on kind of because you've been around a lot of the underground back during the phone freaking days, and just underground message boards and things like that. And how paranoid is it out there? And what do you feel about secure communications and things like that?
Well, it's very paranoid right now. I mean, if you kind of look at the different channels where people communicate, anywhere, even on Reddit or any kind of, public forums where people kind of discuss privacy, information, the protection and preservation of those things, there's a lot of concern, and I think it's justified. I think that we have an administration that's coming in that is definitely hostile towards an open internet and the ability to allow everyone to communicate freely and openly, and that didn't start with this administration, but it certainly with over the last decade, say, how the internet and communication has become an important topic, especially with the way that, our smartphones, our handheld computers that can transmit, that can capture and transmit a lot of data, not just from the user, but actually metadata. Obviously you think about metadata being captured, you think about the Verizon stuff that the government wanted to track and stuff like that. But I think that there is a reasonable degree of concern, right? I won't even call it paranoia, because I think paranoia implies that there's some sense of unreasonableness, and I don't think it's unreasonable right now. But there's a more important thing here, I think, that's at play, which is, for the first time, we're finally really beginning to question how secure are we, and how seriously should we take it? Because, maybe for all these years that we've been putting everything on the internet through Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, or even just communicating through text messages or any kind of messaging app on your phone, we've never really, I think, collectively as a society thought, well, wait a minute, how important is it for me to make sure that the only person who can see this information is the intended recipient.
Right.
So that's it's not paranoia so much as we're finally waking up to the importance of protecting our data.
Right. And email was the first thing. And people often talk about PGP, which of course stands for pretty good privacy, which is just a fantastic name of anything. It's pretty good privacy. It's not, maybe it's not the best. It's pretty good. But PGP was a big thing probably about 15 years ago, I want to say. There were a lot of people getting into it, and it never really took off. And part of why it never really took off is that it was patented, although it was free to use, and there was concerns in the open source community about its usage. And eventually those concerns were overcome. Eventually that patent, I believe, was released or whatever, and PGP ended up being free and open source. I could be completely wrong, but that's from what I remember from reading a couple of years ago. But they eventually released GPG, which is the free and open source version of the same implementation. But I mean, how difficult is it to use PGP? Let's look. I'll tell you right now. I installed. So I have Outlook 2016. If you go online and you search for using PGP or GPG, most of the articles that you'll get will talk about using a Thunderbird client. I wanted to use Outlook. I wanted to use Outlook 2016. I needed to download Win4 GPG because I'm on a Windows machine. It downloaded like 3 apps that all look relatively Greek, unless you're a hardcore,
Right.
Unless you're a hardcore, cypherpunk or whatever. These are things that the average user isn't going to know how to use. I generated my PGP public and private keys. I was able to put it in a key store, put the public one in a key store so people could find me. And I wanted to use Outlook 2016. I had to download this third-party plugin for it, which, there's 2 versions that are out there. One of them was working, one of them wasn't working, it seemed like. So I think I went with the second one. I installed it, got everything working, sent a couple of test messages, and then I wrote a blog post about it. And even to this day, that blog post accounts for more than 50% of the traffic to codepunk.io. Because people are searching for the same thing, because it's that damn hard to set up. And if you want to send an email and you want that email to be encrypted, and you're the average journalist, or you're the average layperson, or you're the average activist, you're not going to be able to do it unless you really put some elbow grease into it. And people are going to get discouraged, and people are not going to use it because they're like, look, I can send an email to my phone. Why is this so hard? And that's been a drawback of it. I don't know if you've had better experiences with PGP or with sending encrypted emails, but to me, that seems to be the general consensus. We have this. It can be used. Hardcore geeks are definitely using it, but your average person just doesn't have the time to invest in learning it and setting it up.
No, that's definitely true. It's not user-friendly. It's not intuitive. I honestly didn't. I used PGP in the late 90s, and I remember that right before PGP was right around when they became incorporated, but before Network Associates, I think it was, bought them. And I remember using it, and then because Phil Zimmerman, the guy who founded PGP,
Right.
had big fights with the government, and I remember hearing, and again, it was just hearsay because the information or the internet was in its sort of like nascent years then. I remember hearing that part of the fight that Zimmerman had, and I'm not saying that this is what happened, I'm just saying this is what I remember, was that the government, I know they got in trouble because PGP got out on the internet. And then because of the strength of the encryption that was then available to the world, the government had a problem with that, the United States government. Right. And I remember hearing, and that did happen. But I remember hearing that the government also wanted Zimmerman to install a backdoor for the government, which, we know they do that. They're fighting Apple on it right now. And Zimmerman refused to do it. And then something like he left. And then whoever was running, I think is Network Associates? Yeah, Network Associates. They went ahead and cooperated with the government. So at a certain point, I remember, and this is all happening like right before the millennium. That's when I stopped using PGP. So I had used it back then. And I remember I installed the software. And I remember it being very unwieldy. Now, obviously, we're going back, over 20 years,
right?
About 20 years. So, I haven't really since played much with encryption up until more recent times. So my experience with it was that, you had to install stuff and you had to like jump through a bunch of hoops for daily usage, especially if you're trying to secure all your communications. I don't see the average person seeing the value in this. I mean, there is value, but a lot of people will be like, oh, it's a lot of work. And that's unfortunate because more people need to wake up to the importance of protecting their information and their communications. But no, It's not easy to use. It's not.
Right. And for me to backtrack just a little bit is when a lot of the applications and technologies we're going to talk about use a form of public and private key pairing, which if you'll remember from previous episode on tour when we talked about cryptography, it's this sort of handshake where if I were to use the same analogy to use in an episode, which it came from somebody's Reddit post, was I send Bill a message. I put a lock on I put a message in a box, put a lock on it. I send it to Bill. Bill can't open it. He puts his lock on it. So now there's two locks on it. He sends it back to me. I take my lock off of it. I send it to him. Lo and behold, only his lock's on it. He takes the lock off of it. He can now open it and read the message. But in the meantime, in between that transit, nobody was able to intercept that and open it because they didn't have the keys to the locks that were on it. And that's kind of a very basic and layman's terms of this kind of public.
It's a brilliant analogy, though. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not like 100% accurate, but it's about the closest you're going to get to a very layman's term of, this kind of private public, handshake that's going on. And PGP uses that. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the term of, RSA style encryption. It uses things like that. It uses, various hashing and compression and public key pairings in order to create this encrypted message that only the sender or only the receiver can decrypt and read. Nobody can intercept it, in the meantime. And yeah, you're right. I mean, PGP went through a lot of different hands. It was patented. It was really just, it was sold as, it was a private, corporation thing. There were battles with the government. Eventually there was battles with, the community because, who owns it. They did an open PGP. Then there was a GPG, and there's all these different flavors. So even if you went to go if the average journalist goes to try to figure this out and look it up, they're not going to have, the tools. I mean, they're going to have to go to, Electronic Frontier Foundation has a couple of nice tutorials. You're going to have to go there and follow it step by step and hope that the information is up to date. It's just unwieldy. And I know there have been recent mail clients that have tried to kind of incorporate this into them. I think LavaBit is one that I believe Edward Snowden was using that's supposed to be encrypted email. That was shut down by the government because they were demanding all of this information from the servers because that's the email server that Edward Snowden was using. And they've actually come under fire from the cryptography community because it's believed that their solution or system is actually not 100% secure. And that's one of the reasons why when the government said give us all this information, they basically had to shut down Proton Mail is another one that does an interesting thing where if I have a Proton Mail account and I send an email to somebody without a Proton Mail account, they can actually decrypt it right there in their browser without actually having to have a Proton Mail account. But you can only decrypt it about 5 times before you have to sign up for a Proton Mail account. So there's all of these caveats to using encrypted emails where it takes a lot of effort and a lot of knowledge and a lot of research to try to figure out, hey, am I really sending something that's safe? If this is intercepted or if this shows up on somebody else's machine, is this message safe or can other people view it? Which is it's scary for a lot of people. And when I talk about that, I'm not talking about people doing illegal things. I'm talking about activists in foreign countries, activists in the United States. If you went to the Women's March and you were trying to organize and those messages were intercepted, you could be stopped before you actually got there to protest. And it is your right to be able to protest. You shouldn't be stopped for it. And people have felt the need to send secure messages when they're trying to assemble because they don't want to be, interfered with by the police or by any other federal organization stopping them along the way. But there's also other nations where people, revolutionaries, if you look at, when there was the Arab Spring, those people need to send private messages. If you look at journalists who are communicating with whistleblowers, or other sources, and they want to keep their sources safe. These are people who are using encryption legally. So when I'm talking about sending a message, I'm not talking about doing illegal stuff and sending a message because you're doing illegal stuff. You're doing perfectly legal stuff. It's within your right to do it, but the government might not actually want you to be able to assemble, or they might want to know who your whistleblower is if you're, blowing up the government spot.
Right. And, even for going back to the layman, even if you're not an activist, why would encryption and securing your communications be important to, an average user? Well, because we also live in a world where we have trolls, and there is a phenomenon called doxing, which is where somebody will go online and figure out all of your private information and release that information online. And people might want to start using methods to secure not just their communications, but any sort of personally identifying information just from trolls and hackers, because that's a reality that we live in. And that's also a very important use of encryption and protection.
Right. And there are 3. And so people who have struggled with email have found kind of a safety net with messengers. And there are several different flavors of encrypted messengers that we can talk about. And there's 3 in particular. Wicker is one of them. Signal is another, and WhatsApp is a third one. And there's a big difference between Wicker and Signal and WhatsApp. And right now, Signal is the one that is recommended by the Electronic Frontier Foundation. It's recommended by Edward Snowden. And it's kind of recommended because in addition to its cryptographical implementation, it's also open source. And one of the big things that the EFF looks for and that some of these other security experts look for is the ability to audit the code. Because even though Wicker and WhatsApp say that they implement this encryption, we don't actually know if they implement it correctly. We don't actually know if there's some sort of backdoor in there because they are closed source. So that's one of the reasons why why Signal always seems to kind of get the nod. Wicker is run by a corporation. They're trying to sell secure messaging to corporations. So the personal usage one is free. It has been audited by an independent security expert who said, hey, the code looks good. But again, a lot of people prefer Signal over Wicker for that very reason. These are security first apps. Both of them have self-destruct mechanism. I actually like Wicker's interface better. You can set the self-destruct per message, and it's for that message. With Signal, when you go to set the self-destruct on a message, it's for the conversation, and it's for every message that you send thereafter. Not too keen on that. I've used both apps. If you're really, 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 really want to send secure information and you're not 100% sure of who to trust, I mean, Signal's a good choice because, again, it's open source. And, Wicker, obviously, to me, has the better interface. Now, I use Wicker with a couple of people. I use Signal with a lot of people. I use WhatsApp with you.
Yeah.
Because you have a Windows phone. And there's a big difference between WhatsApp and Signal and Wicker. And WhatsApp, of course, is owned by Facebook. So if you download the app, you want to make sure you disable sharing information with Facebook. You don't want to use the web client because the web client is not necessarily secure. And you definitely don't want to turn on cloud backup because then all those messages are with WhatsApp. And then they can't argue end-to-end encryption because they're still sitting there on the server. So WhatsApp is not a security first app. WhatsApp is a messaging first app, and it always has been. They have over 1 billion users, I think. I could be pulling that number out of my ass, but I believe there's roughly 1 billion users using it all across the world. It's used in many places like, Iran and Turkey. In fact, it often gets shut down as far as those governments go. They don't want people using WhatsApp within the vicinity. They turn Twitter off, they turn WhatsApp off, so that they can kind of usurp these communications. Now, WhatsApp implements a version of the Signal protocol, which was developed by Open Whisper Communications, which are the same people who actually developed the Signal app. So theoretically, it's the exact same encryption mechanism and roughly the same implementation. There's a big difference, and that recently came under fire. And it's interesting. There was a Guardian article basically saying that there was a backdoor in WhatsApp. That's not 100% true. And the Electronic Frontier Foundation actually came to WhatsApp's defense, and several security experts came to WhatsApp's defense. Because basically what they're saying is that, okay, well, if I send you a message and you lose your phone and you go get a new phone and you download the WhatsApp app, the message that I sent you, if it was within transit, gets sent to you, gets sent to your new device. It doesn't get rejected. It doesn't get, messed with at all. It just shows up because it's a messaging first app, right?
Okay.
So the idea there is that, okay, well, if the server somehow gets hacked, the server can tell somebody's phone that there's a new key and then deliver a message to that person, even though that might not be the phone that it was supposed to go to, or that might not be the message that was supposed to go to it. So basically they're saying that there's a vulnerability in there. Now, the Electronic Frontier Foundation
so to be clear, that opens it up to spoofing then, right? That's the main concern. Then you could spoof the server into thinking that the intended phone hadn't yet received it, so it gets a new key and then receives that message.
Right. So here's an article. I'm going to read 2 paragraphs from it that came from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And they talk about if Bob drops his phone in a lake, right, and he gets a new phone and reinstalls WhatsApp, there are 2 ways this could be handled. The first one is the fail-safe way. The server will delete the message since it was encrypted with the first set of keys from Bob's first phone, and that phone no longer exists. So Bob will never see this message that was sent. This message was in the queue. Alice, if she has key change notification turned on WhatsApp, she'll be warned that Bob is using a new key, and she'll be told that the message was not delivered and given the option to resend it. This is what Signal would do. So Signal would not deliver the message, let you know that this person's key has changed, and give you the option of resending it to them. So the other option is Proceed. So in Proceed, the server lets Alice's phone know that Bob has a new key, and it'll re-encrypt the message and send it. So Alice's phone will do this. Bob will get the message. If Alice has turned on key change notification, she will be warned that Bob's key has changed. That's what WhatsApp does. So basically, WhatsApp will proceed. WhatsApp's job as a messaging client is to send that message first, worry about security second. And it's not a backdoor. Both implementations are acceptable. It's just one errors on the side of security, the other errors on the side of sending a message. So if you have keychain notification turned on in WhatsApp, which is what's highly recommended by many security experts, you will know if you lose your phone, I will know that you lost your phone and you reinstalled WhatsApp. Or if you switch to an Android device, I will know that you've done that. And then I can call you up or contact you by some other means and say, hey, did this actually happen? Did you get a new phone? You could say yes. You could send me a message. We could do some sort of verification, which I know that's actually you. And then I can actually, know to send you more messages or not.
Right. So let me ask you this, coming at it from a practical perspective. So that's a very specific, I don't want to call it an outlying case because it's repeatable,
Mm-hmm.
So it's not random necessarily. And it is subject to exploitation if somebody knows how to do that. How much weight does a flaw like that carry for you in choosing a secure messaging platform?
It depends on what information I'm sending, right? So here's the issue that comes up is if we go back to Bob and Alice, right? Bob doesn't actually have to lose his phone for the server to act like it's lost it. And so what the EFF is saying is that somebody who hacks into a server could pretend that Bob has a new key, And then it will tell Alice that there's a new key, but won't give Alice a chance to intervene and prevent the message from being sent. It just sends it. So if the message were sensitive and somebody had hacked the server to say, hey, there's a keychain, the message will actually go to this malicious change, whoever it may be. So if I'm sending you naked pictures, it depends on how much I worry about the server getting those naked pictures, right? Although I probably wouldn't send you naked pictures, just so
Right.
you can rest assured.
We're good friends, but I don't need to see that.
Not that good. So it depends on the sensitivity of the data, right? So if I'm sending you classified information or classified corporate information, let's say we work for the same company, we're using the same, application, and I need to send you very important information. There might be a concern with WhatsApp if we know that we're being targeted. If you're sending information about how you're going to do some form of, illegal hacktivism, you might not want to use WhatsApp just in case. If you turn on key change notification, you'll know right away if that key has changed. So the only thing that becomes a concern is the last message that was sent. To me, the greater vulnerability is that WhatsApp doesn't actually have self-destruct messages. So if you and I are both using WhatsApp, the greater concern to me is not actually that there's this potential, server issue. The greater issue, the greater concern to me is that you haven't cleared your messages and your phone gets stolen and somebody opens your phone up and all of our messaging history is there. So if I've sent you sensitive information, now they have that. And it's not from a mistake of the software, it's from a mistake of the user. And the user is always the weakest link.
Very true.
So what has been your experience with, I know you haven't done much with probably Wicker or with Signal. I know you've used WhatsApp. Has there been any other discussions that you know about as far as, messaging protocols and messaging apps and some of the issues surrounding it?
Well, you mentioned that when you have closed source software, proprietary software, it's really tough to know if you've got end-to-end encryption, which means that only the two people in that communication, or however many, are actually getting it, or if there's man in the middle issues, right? Where, so say, and this is with Skype and both Skype and Hangouts, Google Hangouts, which say they're encrypted, but actually you send your message encrypted and then it gets unencrypted and then re-encrypted, I think, when on the way to the user. But basically that message is exposed when it gets to the servers of either Microsoft and Google. But I tried to find information because you're right, I haven't used Signal, I haven't used Wicker. They're not available for me. I only use WhatsApp with you and I like it. And if I get more people to use it, I would. But I do use Skype a lot and I like Skype. But Microsoft isn't coming clean. They're not being real specific, which obviously makes you uncomfortable. If you can't say, yes, we absolutely have end-to-end encryption, there is no man in the middle exposure of information, but they haven't specified it. They haven't denied it, but they also haven't confirmed it. And I was reading online, but there's no actual way to find out. And if Microsoft isn't going to tell you, it's the same thing with Hangouts. So, that would be the limitation of my research, just in terms of the kind of messaging apps that I use. And it's a little disconcerting. I do wish that the Windows Phone would give me more options in terms of messaging platforms, but for now, I can stick with WhatsApp and be okay with that.
Right. And you're right. So the Electronic Frontier Foundation has a scorecard, and it's out of date. They claim to be working on a new one. And I mentioned this in one of the blog posts, but basically it gives you a list of all of the messaging services that are out there, and it kind of scores them on, is it encrypted in transit? Is it encrypted so that the provider can't read it? Can you verify contact identities? Are past communications secure if your keys are stolen? Is the code open to independent review? Is the security design properly documented? Has there been a recent code audit, right? So and this is based on 2015 numbers, things have changed since then. In fact, I think WhatsApp sits at 6 out of 7 stars, Signal 7 out of 7. I think Wicker was 5 out of 7, but then they published their actual encryption protocol, so there probably would be a 6 out of 7 if they were using the same thing. So a lot of this can change. Again, this is outdated, but I'm using it as a quick reference. And if we go down to Skype only has a 1 out of 7. And the only thing they know is that the message is encrypted in transit. So Of course, the very next category is encrypted so the provider can't read it. And that is not the case. So you're right. So Skype, although you send the message and the message is theoretically encrypted, it can be read by the provider. It's almost like, and this is a bad analogy, but imagine, HTTPS, that's technically encrypted. So the information that I send from my browser to that web page is encrypted. But once I land on that web page, I'm recorded in the log file. So there's information in there about me. I'm not encrypted from the server that I'm contacting. It's the information in between. Skype is kind of like that. The information in between might be encrypted, but once you hit that server, it's wide open.
Yeah, and it's an unfortunate. It's curious. I mean, Microsoft's making a lot of good moves, I think, towards better software and serving the customer better. And I'm just surprised that they really haven't stepped it up with Skype. Because I like Skype, or at least I like the newer versions of Skype, and I kind of wish that this would be a solution that I could use a little bit, feel a little safer. But
Right. And you would think, I mean, the very fact that it has a much wider user base than WhatsApp and any of these other ones, because Skype is everywhere, especially in other countries, and now it's installed by default on a Windows 10 system. If they got on the ball and they actually made it as secure as possible to send information back and forth, that would be fantastic. But unfortunately, just like maybe Outlook.com, just like Gmail.com, this is information that is getting it's getting grabbed, it's getting processed, it's getting archived, and they want to sell ads on it, or they want to use it to, nowadays they want to use it to better enhance their AI initiatives and their bot initiatives. So I mean, I don't know how reasonable it is for Microsoft to really go out of their way to make an enterprise ultra secure encrypted version of it. But we'll see. Hopefully, with all the changes they've been making recently, it's something that they'll work to improving upon. And I think that, I mean, everybody is now more aware of encryption and the need for it. So my hope is that, I mean, EFF has an initiative to try to get everybody to switch over to HTTPS. They even have a plugin that you can install on Firefox and Chrome to kind of force that if it's available. There's a lot of communication and a lot of education going on for you to keep your data private, and people are starting to be aware that they need to keep their data private. So hopefully that lights a fire under some people.
Yeah, that's definitely the hope. And, it's tough, I think, for, the companies are going to get up to speed, but it's not going to mean much if the users, with all of us, with all of our technology, our, the tablets that we're carrying, the phones that we're carrying, if people don't really begin to at least make some effort, to your point, it's a lot to learn, it's a lot to digest, but to understand some modicum of it is important for you to start protecting your data. If people aren't using it, then it doesn't matter what Microsoft does. I mean, okay, well, there's a good example. People are using Skype. If Microsoft could kind of meet people halfway, even if they don't really understand it or don't want to go on to a wiki or a document page, but they'll know, oh, well, okay, so some trusted firm says Skype is absolutely secure and it's good to go. So many people are already using it. People kind of don't have to worry about it. So That maybe is where companies like Microsoft could really lead the charge, or, somebody could come along and do it. I don't know that I trust like Facebook so much with WhatsApp, but I mean, I don't dislike Facebook as a company. I think that they're doing really interesting things with their technology. But if, WhatsApp ranks high, then that's good. But it would be nice to see some other tech companies kind of get in there and, I don't know, I think help people by making this stuff more secure.
Yeah, I mean, WhatsApp is generally not recommended for ultra secure, super secret encrypted stuff, but mainly it's because of those reasons. It's because Facebook owns them. It's because of, the way it handles kind of that security trade-off. And because that obviously it's not open source, so the code can't be audited. But there's a lot of, it's doing a lot better than a lot of other, companies. And a lot of other messaging services. And I mean, outside of Signal, even Telegram, which is, Telegram's super secret chats is supposed to rank pretty high up there, but there's been a lot of talk about how, they're using their own style of algorithm. And a lot of people think that shouldn't be trusted because it can't be as good as some of the trusted algorithms that are already out there. So there's question marks about Telegram, and there's question marks about just about anything. But Signal is considered the cream of the crop because it's open source, because it created the Signal protocol, because it's just out there and people are using it and people are contributing to it and people are auditing it. But again, WhatsApp implements the Signal protocol. Wickr seems to be a good choice if you're okay with it, it being closed source. you have options, and it's better to use some encryption than no encryption at all. So if you can get some sort of a way to do encrypted email and you could do, encrypted messaging, by all means do it, especially if you plan to do any sort of activism, if you plan to do any sort of journalism. You need to keep your sources safe. You need to keep your messages safe. And it's interesting. There's a company out there. The website is keybase.io. And I sent Bill, I sent you the link not that long ago. I know you signed up. I signed up.
I did.
And it's an interesting company in that they are verifying your identity through your, you log into Keybase, you have your Keybase login information. You then can either create a PGP key, or you can upload your public key, or you can actually upload both your public and private key. However, I did not upload my private key. You can upload your public key, and you can have that associated with your Keybase identity. And then they offer you various options, like to verify your Twitter account, to verify your Facebook account. Basically, through a posting, it'll post to that. You'll make a Twitter post, it'll make a Facebook post, and it creates kind of this chained identity management system. And all of it is actually stored in the blockchain as unspent transactions. So it's publicly available and searchable, throughout the blockchain. There's a verification of your identity. And then, of course, the expectation is that if your Twitter account gets hacked, or if your PGP key gets stolen, you'll go on to Keybase and you'll kind of revoke that, and it'll remove it from your managed list of identities. And that way, all of the people who communicate with you, and if they follow you on Keybase, they'll get a notification of that, so that they know that, hey, Bill's Twitter account just got hacked. So don't communicate with him anything that you don't want this hacker to know, and things like that. And it's kind of interesting. It's in the alpha state. I don't quite know what direction they're going and what they're trying to do, but I like what they're trying to do as far as involving cryptography in a way that's easy to manage. Now, what has been your experiences? I know you were telling me offline about a kind of a story you had to go along with this.
Yeah. So you sent me the invite, and I signed up because I am interested more now in security for all the reasons that I've been saying over and over through the show. Is that it's really important to understand the impetus is on the user to protect themselves. You can't wait for a big software company or even a small software company, and definitely not the government, to try and protect your data. It's really up to you. And so I've been trying to take that more seriously. Obviously, we talk a lot about things like blockchain and Tor in our shows. So I started using it, and I kind of got in there, and I'm trying to figure out what exactly I'm doing. Like, okay, I've linked all my social things that I have, Twitter and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, look, I've got some extra invites to give out because it's currently invite only. You can't just go and sign up. So I sent one to a friend of mine who also is very security minded, and we talk about this subject more recently. And he sent me an email. I said, no, I'm not being funny, but why do I want this? Like, just explain to me why this is useful to me. And I'm like, I don't know. Good question. Secure messaging? Like, I don't know. Like you said, I guess we have to kind of wait and see where they take this to see, like, okay, this is, the value that I can, make use of it with. But I will say that I went to the website, and they've added, they did it recently. I just noticed it now. I don't know how long it's been up, but they actually now have a software download to kind of create a secure encrypted drive locally on your machine.
Yeah, they've actually had that. It was probably already on your machine. It's not something that they've talked about, or it was noticeable at first. And to me, this is a big step. First to talk about the identity management thing. I mean, the value in that is there are people who I know online that I might have known for a very long time, but I've never sent them an email before. And, if they have if for some reason I need to send them an email urgently, if they have their PGP associated, I can look their Twitter. I can look them up on Keybase. They're on there. I see their Twitter. I know their Twitter's, verified, or at least I know that this is the person I'm communicating through Twitter. It has their information, like their Facebook information or like their PGP. And I could send them an email without having to ask them what their email is. And I can make sure that it's encrypted. Or some people with their Twitter handles are different than maybe what they have on Facebook. So maybe I know them from Facebook, or maybe I know them from Twitter, and I want to look up the other while I'm, look up the other instead of the one. And so I can basically go on there, and I can be sure. And again, this is highly speculative. I mean, I know you, I know what your email is, I know what your Twitter handle is, I know what your Facebook is. I know that for the vast majority of people that I'm connected to on Keybase. It's not It's not something that's like some super secret thing. But I think the theory behind it is that it verifies all of these points of identity so that if you know somebody quite well on one social network, you can look up their information on another. If I'm a big user of Reddit, and I know somebody on there and we've been, racking up the karma or whatever, and then that person sends me a message on, Facebook Messenger, I'm not connected with them, but I can choose to either accept or decline this, Facebook Messenger message, and I accept it and they're like, hey, yo, I'm so and so from Reddit. But if the Reddit username is not the same, I don't actually know if this is the same person or not, other than them telling me that. So with Keybase, it's possible that this person who I know from Reddit, I could look them up through, their Reddit information right off of the blockchain. Again, unspent transactions, it's out there in the public. And then I can find the associated Facebook account. And then I can determine for myself, okay, is this the actual person I was talking to or is it not?
Right.
I think that's the theory behind it. But the Keybase file system to me is something I would pay money for. And again, it's in alpha. They tell you like, don't put anything in the Keybase file system that you're not willing to lose, because we're not guaranteeing it'll work. We're not guaranteeing the backup. The entire website is in alpha state. But the Keybase file system, you have your public and private folders, but you also have, they basically make it so that I can create a folder that's, for me and you, and it creates it automatically just by using, the slashes or whatever in the folder name. And so it allows me to basically privately share files with you or with anybody if it's just if I only know their Twitter handle, if it, I can do Neurothustra at Twitter, and I know that I'm sharing this file with whoever's connected to the Neurothustra at Twitter handle on Keybase. And you know what? If you're not on Keybase and I send in information to that part of the file system, it'll actually send you an invite and let you know that there's files waiting for you. I think this is the key selling point. When I look at stuff like OneDrive, which I absolutely love, my OneDrive account got like a terabyte, worth of space in there.
Yeah, me too.
It's not encrypted. I mean, the government could, and not that there's anything in there for the government to read, but the government could go in there, or anybody could hack into there, and they have, information. I could tell you one thing. I got my tax returns are actually in my OneDrive account. They're in my OneDrive account, but they're encrypted. I encrypted them on my local file system before sending them up there. That way they're in the cloud, but they're not in there to where somebody can hack in and read my tax returns and see all of my, social security number and all that other information. They're in there as encrypted files. With the Keybase file system, it's always encrypted unless you threw it in a public folder. So I think the idea behind that is to actually have an encrypted file share. And I love the idea, and it's so easy to use. It seems like it's way easier than some of the other solutions out there. And I think that might be their moneymaker. I think they do want to charge for that in the future. But I'll have to keep an eye on it, see how it develops. See how the technology, goes. It's written in Go, so it's supposed to be, pretty robust.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know it was written in Go.
Yeah, well, at least the base client on the Windows platform is written in Go. So I don't know about other platforms, but I have it installed for obviously for Windows, so that's written in Go. And we'll have to see how it goes. I mean, I think that they're onto something. I mean, they haven't gotten a lot of publicity for it, but apparently they've gotten funding for it. And I think that I want to say that the two guys are like former founders of OkCupid or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But they have the background and they have the clout and they have the money. So we'll just have to see how it goes. But I think it offers some value. And if the only thing they do is make it easier to verify identities and send encrypted information or files back and forth in a very accessible way, I think they're onto something.
Right. No, I agree. And I'm definitely keeping my eye on it too, because for all the reasons I just explained, I think it's really good to kind of have these options. And certainly the ones that are easier are the ones that are going to win out in the long game. Yeah,
absolutely. But again, Keybase is an alpha release. Don't hold your breath and don't throw anything in there you're not willing to lose or have spied on. But it's certainly something that will hopefully help people along. And one of the things that I wanted to mention real quick before we decide to wrap anything up, or at least before we get to some closing thoughts, one of the things that I want to mention is we did not go into a great deal of detail over the cryptographic algorithms behind PGP or behind these messaging systems, and that was on purpose. It could get very heavy in terminology. And I mean, you pick yourself up a cryptography book if you really, really, really want to get into it. I didn't want to drown people out or make them fall asleep when they're driving to work
Right.
by listening to me talk about things that they'll probably, they're likely to forget later in a day anyway. So we try to really kind of hone in on a surface level and really talk about what it means to send encrypted messaging and what the value is and who you should trust, if anybody at all. And that's kind of how we went with this one, especially in today's current environment. Bill, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I don't. I think that I'm still a neophyte in the world of cryptography, and I'm learning a lot. Some of it's really dense material, but kind of interesting. But I also feel like it's important enough that I kind of have to just make sure I understand it. If for no other reason, then if I can do my best, then I can at least help friends and family who are more interested in it and kind of help be like a buffer, so that I can, since I'm a technical person, I can try to do what I can to absorb as much as I can and help people onto it where they maybe otherwise would just give up because they're looking at it being like, I don't get it, screw it. Where maybe I can kind of offer that as a service, as a friend, and help people out with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that more and more people need to be aware of. I mean, nobody in my immediate family probably even understands what encryption means. And of course, you always have those people that say, "Oh, well, if you're not doing anything illegal, you don't have anything to hide. Who cares if somebody's spying on you?" But that's not the point. So.
No, it's ridiculous. And I'm going to just tell this very short story, but you and I worked for a guy who used to say that all the time. And my immediate thought was that, like, well, wait a minute. Who gets to decide what sort of information should and shouldn't be protected? It's my right. It's my choice. And to be judgmental, that's ridiculous. However, this same person would then, every time he'd leave his computer, even for just a minute to get some water, would lock his computer,
And by the way, the water cooler was right behind him.
Right.
We used to make fun of him because he would be working on something, and if you were standing there, he would lock his computer screen to turn around to get water out of the cooler that was directly. He didn't even have to get up out of his chair. He just had to spin his chair around to fill the water up, and he would lock his computer.
Yeah.
So we've worked with some interesting people in the past, but it's definitely informed us, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we'll wrap up this episode and we will see you guys in another 2 weeks with a new topic. It'll be another recording for us. And until then, have a good one.
Take care, everybody.
That's it for this episode of Codepunk. You can subscribe to this podcast on Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher, or listen to it on the web at codepunk.io. You can find Bill on Twitter at Norathustra and Michael on Twitter at Zool.